I'm gonna get this part out of the way super early just because I like you guys a lot. Like, comment, and ring the notification bell after subscribing, please. That stuff really helps me out, and if you want to see more Fire Emblem videos, that's your way to tell me. Oh, also spoiler warning up to Chapter 16. Now then, hiya papaya everyone! Claire Fluffle here, and I've been a huge fan of Fire Emblem for a really long time. As in, way before even Awakening came out. Which is turning 10 this year. Quote-unquote awakening babies are all grown up now. Aw, enjoy adulthood. Huh. I wasn't a Fire Emblem Fire fan from the very start. I wasn't even alive, technically. But somewhere in between the releases of Radiant Dawn and Shadow Dragon is when I really got into the series. I've played at least half of every game so far and have finished just about all of them. They're a great time, and Engage bringing back older characters, even if it is just some of the main lords, is really appreciated. Makes this franchise feel like it has legacy to it, you know? But for people newer to the series, you may not understand why us older fans just think they're neat. Or hey, if Engage is your first game, why are people happy seeing, Lucina or Byleth or Corrin? Oh, wait, these characters were in Smash Bros. Fire Emblem's bad. There's too many characters in Smash. Regardless of whether or not this is your first Fire Emblem game or your 17th, you may not know the history of these characters and why seeing them all is a jolly old time. And I'm assuming that's why you clicked on the video. Unless you're just watching to help me out. Oh, I know you guys are out there. I appreciate you. Thank you. These characters are not only represented by themselves, the emblem version of themselves, to be clear, but also their gameplay perks. While their legacy is nice and all, their value towards gameplay is extremely handy. Engage was built around having these things, and when you see just how incredibly good some of them are, you'll scream to the high heavens out of pure joy! Golly gee, these are pretty nice to have. This isn't a definitive ranking of the emblems, it's way too early to tell, but I'll say on a semi-efficient scale for month 1. No one-turn strats or anything, but if you're playing and looking to clear these maps in, I don't know, 10-ish turns or less, that's probably way too many to be frank, but we'll just say that for now. Good enough for me. With that, we're ready to begin this video journey together. And where else do we start other than the beginning? I don't know, we can start with Roy. Rawr! Ring of the Hero King, Marth, from Fire Emblem Shadow Dragon. Okay, for real though, we're gonna start with Marth. Marth is the Prince of Altea, a small nation in the land of Arcanea. After having his home invaded by Dolor, backed with the strength of the Dark Dragon Medius, Marth goes into hiding in the island nation of Talis. He sets off on a quest to end the war started by Medius once and for all. And he does. Twice, in fact. Marth may not be the deepest character in the series, but he is one of the most recognizable. He's also been in 4 games, 5 now counting Engage, which may not sound like much, but by Fire Emblem standards, give someone else a turn already. Yeesh. Marth's ring hasn't set the world on fire as far as utility or offense goes. He is your first emblem, which helps Leir big time in the very early game, but you get Sigurd and Celica almost immediately after, who greatly outshine him. Still, this doesn't mean you can't equip Marth at all, and he does have some perks. Lodestar Rush is a good way of dealing safe damage early on, and while not unique to him, the Rapier is great for dealing with Cavaliers on player phase. Same with enemy phase, but you do gotta be careful about Lance Cavs. You don't want to break a Leir even more than the story already breaks them, do you? Unfortunately, Marth turns Roy after Chapter 10 and stays gone for a while. Again, I'm not gonna get into specifics because I'm not spoiling past Chapter 16, but you do have to be wary about that. Overall, he's probably the worst of the emblems, but they all do offer something, and again, it's not like you're costing yourself anything by using Marth, so you might as well use him, right? Ring of the Caring Priestess, Celica, from Fire Emblem Echoes, Shadows of Valentia. Celica was born into the nobility of Zofia, but was sent into hiding after an attempt to assassinate her and everyone in her family. She was then raised for a short while in Ram Village, but despite the short length, her time there was very important. She befriended the villagers, but in particular, she became really close with a boy named Alm. They were inseparable, not only because they both had a brand on their opposite hands, but also because they're so cute! But Celica was found in the village, and she had to flee, going into hiding elsewhere. Years had passed afterwards, and while Alwyn and Celica never forgot about each other, Celica had her own business to take care of. The food, soil, and general well-being of Zofia was at an all-time low. She sets off on a journey to see the goddess Milla and beg her for her aid. There's a lot more to say with Celica, thanks to Shadows of Valentia having a far deeper story than anything Marth has ever had to deal with. But for gameplay, yeah, no, there's still a lot. She's really good. To get the obvious one out of the way, holy heck, Warp Ragnarok is insanely good, especially early on. Basically, it allows your unit to warp to enemies within a certain range and blast them with, well, Ragnarok, a super strong magic attack. This honestly has utility on units who aren't even your mages since they can, warp, but for the damage and range, it is definitely best used on mystic units. This isn't to mention other perks that Celica has, such as Seraphim, which deals boosted damage to the Corrupted, which are everywhere, especially when Celica's around. She can use Echo to attack and then attack again, great for 3-range spells like Thunder. And while you don't get these perks until very late, free access to recover as well as favorite food, a skill that maxes out your engage meter if you eat lunch, cute callback, I just hope that lunch is raw flour, are nice to have. Overall, Celica is a very valuable ring to have. She's really good. Ring of the Holy Knight, Sigurd from Fire Emblem Genealogy of the Holy War. Sigurd, one of the finest knights of Chalfi and all of the Kingdom of Granvale. After neighboring Kingdom Verdane invades and kidnaps one of Sigurd's close friends, Aideen, he travels with a group of his closest knights, such as Arden, with support of Quan of Leonster to put a stop to Verdane's sudden aggression. Okay, if you're into Fire Emblem, but if you aren't, this is a crash course, no worries, but if you're into Fire Emblem, you've at least heard someone talk about genealogy and its story, and how you simply have to experience it without being spoiled. And I agree. I don't want to be the one to spoil you. Engage may or may not spoil part of it super early on, but that's beside the point. What I can talk about, though, is the movement boost that Sigurd's Emblem Ring gives you. See, Genealogy has a lot of weird and nifty game mechanics. It's amazing, go play it. And one of them is the existence of road tiles. Well, I guess they really look more like sand tiles, but when you realize that they let you move further, you stop caring about the specifics. This applies to everyone in Genealogy, especially your units who ride horses, such as Sigurd, and they can schmooth. In Engage, Sigurd naturally gives you +1 move even if you're not engaged, but when you are engaged, you get +5. Holy moly. If you don't know why that's so absurdly good, to make a very long story short, more movement equals more options. There's only so much time in the day for not only you, but also your Fire Emblem characters. If you can go more places at any given time, the more you can do. Thus, the better and more efficient you are. Basically, movement is the best stat. And that's not all. A Rider's Band when you're engaged, a fixed +1 attack for every tile moved for the first hit of combat, even when you're not engaged. Overdrive, which lets you strike through a line of enemies and deal damage to all of them, especially when you're using the Rider's Bane on cav units. This one you get much later on, but Headlong Rush, fitting for Sigurd's rash nature, but also grants an immunity to freeze, which as it is a really annoying status element. And not to mention, this one's a minor spoiler, but he's only unavailable for 10 chapters, with 3 of these being Marth only, giving him some of the best availability of any emblem. Many have paired him with Louis to great success, while others love pairing him with a flyer for the best movement you can get in the game. Once you get Seedal, your dancer, though, it becomes pretty clear having a 10-move dancer is pretty broken. I'm not sure if Sigurd will be the best emblem ring in the game overall, but given, 10-move dancer, 9-move armor knight, 11 and 12-move flyer? Yeah, he's got my vote, at least right now. Ring of the Sage Lord, Leif, from Fire Emblem Thracia 776. Leif, son of Prince Quan and Ethlyn, Sigurd's sister. Without going too deep into things, Leif has had it pretty rough, and in his own game, Thracia 776, he fights to free his nation from the abusive iron will of Thracia. He goes through a lot, including one heck of a recruitment of a general of all classes. And I promise from this point on, I don't have to be super vague for basic descriptions of characters. That said, while Leif's journey is a tough one of dark tragedy, get it? Dark because of Thracia fog? It's also very hopeful. Things eventually do get better for Leif. and his underdog story is one of the most memorable of any Fire Emblem ever told. It also has Marty in it, so really, how grim can it be? Leif is interesting in terms of gameplay because he's got a lot of really good traits, but when engaged, The quadruple attack sounds fantastic, but oftentimes it doesn't amount to nearly enough, since your weapons actually scale to strength instead of dealing boosted damage. Adaptable is nice for not getting broken, but it never feels like it amounts to very much, since you might just wind up using the weakest weapon instead of doing something like, oh, I don't know, break baiting. The killer axe is cool, but without a forage, it's pretty inaccurate. But the passive skills you always have, like extra build so weapons slow your units down less, or arm shield, which buffs your defenses if you have weapon triangle advantage, the Vantage, which, well, Vantage has obvious perks. If you have a knife unit like Yunaka, you can give him to her and grant her even more avoid, which on Yunaka specifically is ridiculous. It seems good enough for LTC strats, with Yunaka kind of carrying boss kills this way. Or at the very least, I've seen an LTC where you can one-turn a ton of chapters with Yunaka that way. And yeah, vulnerable to chain attacks, but if you can get to the boss early, who cares? We aren't assuming one-turns for this, like I said before, so unless you can make a two-range knife crit build, you may have to be a little careful, but still, Leif overall can be really, really good if given to the right unit. Ring of the Young Lion, Roy from Fire Emblem, the Binding Blade. Alright, now we can go back to talking about characters again, finally. Roy, Prince of Foray and son of King Eliwood. Neighboring country Bern launches an all-out war against the rest of the continent, and in Eliwood's stead, Roy leads a small army to meet up with Hector of Ostia and launch a counterattack. From there, Roy learns combat experience and is put in a situation where he must lead the whole Lycian army, or Lycian, whatever, and defeat King Zephiel and maybe even dragons? Along the way, he amasses a massive army as well as the legendary weapons used in the war against dragons. Roy may have a simple tale, but it is also a very enjoyable one. So you know Roy's promotion, it's one of the most infamous parts of Binding Blade that people love to clown on. Myself included, this is coming from somebody who adores Binding Blade. Basically, when Roy promotes, he turns from Roy into Roy and gets nothing except for stat bonuses. Yeah, they made that an Engage skill of his. I have no clue, honestly, if this is intentional, but I don't care. It's funny. Otherwise, Roy is all out on being on the front lines and going on the offensive. Strength boosts, effect and weaponry like the Lance Raver and the Worm Slayer, iconic Binding Blade weapon right there, more so than the Binding Blade itself, and other skills like Holdout, which will guarantee you survive with 1 HP if you start with enough HP, or Advance, Game Boy Advance, which effectively grants Roy 1 extra move if it would allow him to attack an enemy. Blazing Lion deserves special mention too, as it deals strong damage and, if played right, almost entirely neuter enemy movement for a turn, which is huge. Roy's got a lot going for him. Ironic, since in his actual game, he's best used as a support unit. Yeah, Binding Blade, kinda weird. Ring of the Lady of the Plains, Lyn from Fire Emblem, the Blazing Blade. Lyn, the last living person of her Sakaean tribe. She's lived her life on the plains, and for a while, totally isolated. She discovers one day after a fated meeting with a tactician that she is royalty, and through a perilous quest, reunites with her grandfather. Due to the fating meeting with the tactician, she is also embroiled in a quest with Eliwood and Hector to save the world from the nefarious Nurgle, but all the while, she yearns for the days spent in the plains of Sakae. Or Sika. I'm telling you, Sika sounds so cooler. Ugh. I think we all know Lyn, but if it's been a while since you've played the game she came from and aren't into heroes much, here's a refresher. She's fast! Speed Taker is one of the most useful skills in the whole game, as it grants speed +2 for every kill that you get, up to +10. Given build is such a brutal stat in this game, on top of needing 5 more speed to double instead of 4, this, on top of the speed boosts that Lyn will naturally grant the player passively, become a huge help. Called doubles and Astra Storm are where the real fun starts though. Astra Storm is pretty simple, with a range of, oh mama, attacking enemies 5 times with weaker hits. If you put this on a strong unit, or finish Lyn's super early paralog and get the Mula gear, this deals a lot of damage. The Called Doubles is really interesting though, as it not only calls back to Lyn's excellent crit animations back on the GBA, but it also baits out enemies into killing the duplicates. Or you can use them for chain attacks, either or, but the first one's funnier. And how can I forget Alacrity or Alacrity, or I keep calling it Alarcity, I don't know. But if you have X more speed than the opponent, X being dependent on which version of the skill you have, you can follow up before your opponent. Lynn's got a lot of good going for her, and easily has some of the best availability in the whole game. Absolutely one of the better emblem rings. Ring of the Azure Twins, Eirika and Ephraim, for some reason, from Fire Emblem, the Sacred Stones. Eirika and Ephraim, crowned Prince and Princess of Renee, aren't Prince and Princess for very long, as neighboring Grado launches an invasion that turns into an all-out war, resulting in the death of their father. The nation of Grado is looking to destroy the Sacred Stones to summon the Dark God back to the land. Eirika wishes to find a peaceful resolution to this, but soon realizes it may not be possible. That said, she never gives up. At the very least, she needs to speak to one of her dearest friends in Grado, Prince Leon, before making any final judgments. Throughout the game, both Eirika and Ephraim are assisted by Seth. If you're wondering why that's important, play Sacred Stones. I'll be honest, I'm not really sure why this wasn't just Eirika or just Ephraim. I think Ulm and Celica would have made a lot more sense if they had to pick a twofer, but I like Eirika and Ephraim, so it's fine. I won't lie though, this is the emblem that I understand the least. I guess that's just the nature of a more complex emblem like this, but none of their perks really jump out to me, you know? They grant tons of avoid to lance units, which is pretty great, and gentility, which either grants you defense +3 or +5, is great for bulkier builds. More to the point, they actually have an attack where they both attack, and if their emblem ring is worn by a cav unit, they deal more damage. And this is obviously a nod to their promotions, which grant both of them a horse, but I do have to point out that there's a certain other unit in Sacred Stones who has a horse from the very start, and deals more damage than anyone else in your army for most, if not all, of the whole game. And if you don't know who that is, play Sacred Seth. I mean, play Sacred Stones. Ring of the Radiant Hero, Ike, from Fire Emblem Path of Radiance. Ike, son of a mercenary leader, Grail, living in the land of Tellius. In the continent of Crimea, famed for its knowledge, Ike begins working for the Grail mercenaries and begins to learn of the world around him before learning that the continent of Dayan, famed for its military prowess, has invaded Crimea and declared war. Crimea, not being ready for the attack and also being more famed for their knowledge than their strength, is swiftly defeated. But Ike and the other mercenaries find the self-proclaimed Princess of Crimea, who hires them to keep her safe and request help from Gallia, land of the Laguz, a species who's able to shapeshift into different animals, in Gallia's case, cats, tigers, and lions. The Laguz and the Beork being the friendly name for humans in Tellius, have a long, bitter history of war, discrimination, and all-around not pleasantries. But this is one of the many things that Alencia and Ike aim to fix on their journey to reclaim Crimea from Dayan. Also, Path of Radiance is the best Fire Emblem and you should play it sometime. We all know Ike, we all like Ike, he's the best, but unlike the other characters, Ike is actually pretty different in Path of Radiance than he is in Radiant Dawn, both for visuals and gameplay. They definitely lean towards a Radiant Dawn in a lot of areas. I adore that Ike gets the hammer. If you know, you know. If you don't, I ain't spoiling it. But Ike gets the literal best possible Path of Radiance benefits you could ask for. Wrath Resolve. The combo absolutely breaks him in Path of Radiance, even if you can only really properly take advantage of it for 2 chapters. Basically, if the unit that you give Wrath and Resolve to is below half health, they get speed, skill, which is good for crits, and strength times 1.5 from Resolve. Wrath, for the same HP benchmark, Wrath gives you double crit. And yes, the 2 of them stack together. It isn't 1-to-1 in Engage. Wrath gives 1 crit for every point below max HP you are, capping out at 30, while Resolve grants defense and res +5 below 75% HP, or +7 once you get the better version. Combined with skills like Laguz Friend, which halves damage but gives enemies 100% hit, regular passive defense buffs, Ragnell and Irvin, which grant defense +5 or res +3 respectively when equipped, and Great Aether, which launches an AoE attack that heals like Aether did back in the Tellius games, Ike is all about taking damage and destroying everything in sight. You don't even have to wait very long to get access to his better skills, since you get his paralog crazy early, although it is challenging. Hands down, Ike is my favorite emblem to use for those reasons, which, trust me, I didn't think I was going to be when I saw him at first, but I am very happy about that. Although, similar to Leif, he is weak to chain attacks. That said, in my playthrough, I put him on Panette. She joins as a berserker with insanely high HP and strength. She also gets crit boost if not at max HP thanks to her personal skill. She can also use killer axes, which you can forge to have more crit. Because of this, plus Ike's defenses, plus because of Ike's offenses, plus other natural crit boosts, plus Sea-Doll, plus another way of dancing that we'll get into later, she can bait out every single boss in the entire game, or multiple in cases of, quick spoiler, Chapter 17, and take them all out in basically a single turn, maybe two if I couldn't leave Sea-Doll in range. Panette and Ike are a perfect fit for each other, and the duo is genuinely my single favorite thing about playing Engage. It's so much fun. I wouldn't say that Ike is the best emblem, but with the right synergy, he's got some of the best cheese strats in the entire game. Oh, if you are going for Ike plus Panette, make it a point to get Vantage and pair up. That helps a lot in dealing with enemies. Ring of the Dawn Maiden, Micaiah from Fire Emblem Radiant Dawn. Micaiah, member of the Dawn Brigade, a poor group of citizens trying to free Dayan from the clutches of Benyon. A lot happened in Path of Radiance, and without saying things to spoil the events of that game, Dayan is in a pretty rough spot. The citizens of Dayan, however, cling on to hope from rumors of a silver-haired maiden, said to be able to heal any injuries and lead Dayan back to a better place. The battle isn't easy, but Micaiah is also able to find hope as she discovers that Dayan royalty may be in hiding, and with their help, they can bring Dayan back to its former glory. One of the many super neat things about Radiant Dawn is that, to line up with the story, Micaiah can actually heal your units, even though she isn't a healer. She does this via sacrifice, which heals a unit in exchange for Micaiah's own HP, although she can't go below 1 HP because death! Engage decided to take that and yank it up to 1,000,000 with Great Sacrifice, which heals all allies on the map but leaves her ring bearer with 1 HP, so you gotta be careful about that. Disappointingly, she doesn't have Fanny, but she does get Shine and Nosferatu, the latter only being light magic in the Tellius game, so that's a cute callback. Micaiah's real utility, though, comes from when she's engaged. You get increased staff range as well as an increased radius. So for example, if you're warping somebody over, now instead of warping 1 unit, you could warp over 4! This by itself instantly makes Micaiah one of the best emblem rings in the game, but then you also factor in the fact that at any point she can just Great Sacrifice and heal literally every single one of your units on the map back to 1 HP. Yeah, that's undeniably one of the strongest tools you have on the entire game, on top of the warp stuff. Micaiah's pretty heckin' good. I would not be surprised if she winds up being one of the best. Ring of the Exalt Priestess, Lucina from Fire Emblem Awakening. This one's gonna have spoilers, by the way. Lucina, one of many victims of the cruel fell dragon, Grima. Yeah, we're talking about the real fell dragon here, none of this Somnom nonsense. Blech. Did I just call him Somnom? Back to Lucina, her parents, slaughtered in an attempt to stop the fell dragon, sought any opportunity to help save them. The only way that she could find was to go back to before Grima's awakening. Disguising herself as the hero king of legend, Marth, she aims to stop Grima before they can cause the end of the world that she, alongside the children of the rest of Crom's shepherds, had to suffer through. I'll cut it short there to prevent any further spoilers. Play Awakening if you somehow haven't already. It's good. The story of Lucina's game, again Awakening, was all about making close bonds and friendships. Needless to say, in Engage, her style revolves around just that. This winds up being a callback to the single most absurd mechanic in any Fire Emblem game to date, well known by basically everybody who got into Fire Emblem prior to 3 houses, Pair Up. With Pair Up, the higher support you had with a paired up unit, see your bond, the higher your odds of doing a second attack and nullifying all incoming damage. Lucina has some excellent qualities, like Bonded Shield, nullifying damage if adjacent to a unit who is attacked, or Dual Support, granting up to 90 avoid based on the support level of adjacent units. What potentially makes Lucina the best emblem in the game, though, above maybe even Sigurd on Sea-Doll, is Dual Assist, which has either a 35 or 70% chance depending on which version you have. It should always be 70%, her Paralock is dummy easy, and you unlock it immediately. For allies to perform a chain attack if they're within movement range. I'd personally argue that Sigurd and Micaiah would be better, if only for their consistency and the lack of setup required, pretty much. But being able to defeat bosses with nothing but chain attacks, especially on Maddening, is really, really good when bosses are as strong as they are. All around, Lucina is excellent. Ring of the Crux of Fate, Corrin from Fire Emblem Fates. Corrin. Princess of Nor, raised alongside her brothers and sisters Xander, Camilla, Leo, and Elise. Corrin lived a sheltered yet happy life until one day, King Garen decided she was ready to see the world. And by see the world, he meant invade and slaughter people in Hoshido, their neighboring country they are currently at war with. After sparing some Hoshidan lives and ending up in Hoshido herself, she learns that she is actually the Princess of Hoshido and was stolen at a young age, making her real siblings Ryoma, Hinoka, Takumi, and Sakura. When her Norian siblings came to rescue her, she had to make a choice. Who does she side with? Her blood family and oppose Garen with Hoshido? Stick with the people she grew up with and try to change things from the inside with Nor? Find peace and try to appease both sides? Or join and smash! Talking about fates is always difficult for me, mostly since I really don't like it, but looking at Corrin's kit, it's hard to argue that she isn't good. In particular, she has access to Pair Up, which nullifies damage from chain attacks. And the best part? You can inherit that. Things like Leif and Yunaka or Ike and Panette can work out so much better because of this. And that said, Corrin isn't just good for Pair Up. Dragon Vein, while not a full-on mechanic like it was in Fates, still not a mechanic I really enjoy, has interesting utility in Engage. Depending on your movement type, it gets different effects. I like the healing effect it gets from flyers a lot, which also ties in nicely with Dreadful Aura, something that prevents enemies from moving for a turn if attacked while you're engaged. I find Ivy works really well for what I'd use Corrin for, especially since Thunder Magic is 3 range, keeping Ivy safe from harm. I'll never be able to say that I like Corrin, but Corrin's emblem perks? Yeah, they're great, okay? They're great, okay? Is that what you wanted to hear? Ring of the Instructor. Byleth from Fire Emblem 3 Houses. Byleth, a mercenary living with his father, Gerald, not Grail. One day, 3 students of the nearby Garrick Mach Monastery asked Gerald and Byleth for help as they were being chased by bandits. These kids actually turn out to be royalty, more specifically the future kings and queen of their respective continents. Edelgard, future emperor of the Etruscan Empire, Dimitri, future king of the Kingdom of Fargus, and Claude, recently discovered heir to the throne of the Leicester Alliance. After helping them, Byleth and Gerald are summoned to the aforementioned monastery, where they meet Rhea, head of the Church of Saros. She assigns Byleth as a teacher at the monastery to help whichever class of his choosing throughout not only their daily lives, but also in battle. This decision is a huge turning point, not only in Byleth's life, but for the future of all of Fodlan. We're at a point where I don't think I really needed to tell you any of that, what with how recent and super popular 3 Houses is, but hey, you never know. There is a lot that the devs could have taken from Byleth, in particular with Gambits. These are a defining aspect of 3 Houses and were so absurdly strong that they made 3 Houses a maddening mode possible. How do you even do that? Stride was the easy pick here, and while something like Impregnable Wall would also have been great, the one Gambit they picked is arguably the best one. Also, humorously, one that Byleth naturally can never do. Dance of the Goddess. For the unfamiliar, Dance of the Goddess allows units in each of the cardinal directions of the user who've already moved to move again. Dancing throughout all of Fire Emblem is arguably the best thing that you can do in any game that lets you do that for 4 units, including your actual dancer. Basically, Seedall dances for someone, Byleth dances for Seedall, Seedall dances for someone again. Byleth has some other great utility, like AoE Instruct, boosting the stats of everyone in a certain range, or Divine Pulse, giving your unit the chance to hit an attack that they missed with a 30 or 50 plus luck % chance. Lost and Found is also a very cute callback, finding lost items and increasing support, and unlike 3 Houses, there's no guessing this time. There's a lot of good to Byleth, but Dance of the Goddess is truly something special, easily the best thing about him. And with that, we have covered each and every single one of the emblem rings. That are free anyway. I didn't talk about Tiki and the War Criminals, but they're a part of the DLC pass that, I don't know, maybe I'll cover in another video? Who knows how much DLC we're gonna get after all? But for now, I hope you enjoyed learning about why all of these characters are so special, and if you did already know for all of them, knowledge flex? That's good enough for me. With that, I've been Claire, thank you all so much for watching, and if you enjoyed, don't forget that I stream Engage, as well as other Fire Emblem games, on twitch.tv/Claire_Fluffle. Go there and watch me play. I finished my first playthrough, so now we get to start the real fun. Until then, though, bye!